Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this beautiful venue tonight on this cold fall evening. Feels like winter, doesn't it? It's a thrill to be standing here with you all and to look around this room and to see so many familiar and so many new faces as we celebrate the 60th anniversary of a wonderful MS chapter, and we celebrate some of the successes that chapter has had. Tonight we are all joined by a common goal and by a variety of different supporters, people living with MS, caregivers, physicians, researchers, fundraisers, donors, volunteers, and many others. Whatever your reason for being here this evening, we thank you for being here with us tonight and for joining us in this celebration. My name is Todd Oldroyd, and I'm the incoming chairman of the Volunteer Board of Trustees. It's my pleasure to have you all here. Thank you. I can tell you all that as I think back over the years, the last 7 years or so that I've served on this board, and as I think back through the 60 years of progress of this chapter, and as I think the progress of this society, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to go to the leadership conference, and it truly is an amazing history. And I'm so very cognizant of the incredible leadership of those who have preceded me here in this chapter, and I'm both excited and humbled by the opportunity to serve in this role. And I must confess I'm a little daunted by the big shoes I have to fill over the next couple of years. Before we really get off to the celebration, we do have some business that we need to take care of. Every great organization relies on the strength of its leadership to guide the organization's work, to increase the organization's capacity, and to keep the organization accountable to its mission and its values and its vision. You all play a vital role in this process, whether you make a donation of time or money to the National MS Society, and whether you live with MS or whether you care for someone who does. Every single one of you is a member, and with this comes the responsibility to annually confirm our Board of Trustees. It's an honor for me to present to you the slate of trustees that you see on the screen before you, and I think you probably see them in the programs that you have. And I'd like to ask the folks that are here on this list, if they could stand for us for just a moment so we can all see you if you're here. I'd like to ask you so we can recognize these leaders. Absolutely. This is the part of the program. I'm going to ask the trustees to stay standing for just a minute, because this is the part of the program where we need to hear your voice. And I'm asking all of you to accept our 2015 Board of Trustees nominations. And if there are no objections, do I hear any objections? Hearing none, I'd like all of you to affirm your support of these 2015 nominees, and also to express your appreciation to these wonderful leaders with your applause. Now, for just a moment, I need to go off script, and this is probably really dangerous, but I'd like Bob Harmon to just stand for one moment. Bob Harmon, thank you, Bob. Bob, I need to tell you in front of these witnesses a little story, and I'm glad that they're all here to hear this with me. I have a couple of confessions to make. Number one, I'm not a serious bike rider, but I've ridden for the last few years in the MS bike ride. I ride on a corporate team, and every year my training for the bike ride is I get out my bike from the rafters of the garage 24 hours before the bike ride. I wipe off the cobwebs, I fill up the tires, and I throw it in the car, and I'm ready for that ride. I'm there with my team on the morning of the event. And after about 10, 15 miles, I find myself traveling on the road by myself because the rest of my team is about 30 miles ahead of me. So in June of this year, that happened again, and I got close. I was within eyesight of the turnaround point, and I thought, I don't need to go the rest of the way. I'm close enough. I can call this a 40-mile ride. The reason for the 40-mile ride is because my first year, I made the mistake of actually riding 75 with no training, the same kind of training, and that was a bad mistake. So I've learned 40 is about my limit. I have one other confession to make to you. I am not particularly handy. In fact, I'm not handy at all. My wife fixes everything in my house. I used to hand her the tools until she got tired of me always handing her the wrong tools, and she said no more of that. So every year I pray that I will not have a flat tire on this bike ride. I literally I say, please don't let me have a flat tire. But I'm always prepared. I bring the extra tube. I do all the things one is supposed to do. Well, this year I forgot that tube, and so this year I'm riding along, coming back. For those of you who ride with us, you know that about 1.5 miles, 2 miles outside of Logan, you go by on this long road. There's the airport off to the left as you're coming back, and you just know when you're there that you've made the ride, right? Well, there I am, and all of a sudden I hear this psst, and I look down, and there goes my front tire. I jump off the bike, and as always happens on the bike ride, within 1.5 minutes, here comes a guy in a truck, and he says, I can help you. And I looked at him, and I said, well, okay. I said, I don't have an inner tube. He says, okay, well, I can take care of that. I've got an inner tube. I said, okay, well, I also, I don't know how to fix it if you give me the inner tube. And he looked at me, and he gave me kind of a strange look, but he said, well, I can help you with that, too. And I said, well, okay. And I could tell he, didn't really want to fix this bike, this tube. And he said to me, he says, hey, he says, if you want, he says, there's a van that's going to be coming by here in about 3 minutes with about 3 other people in it. And if you'd like, I could just have them pick you up. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm 1.5 miles from the finish line. Why not? Sure, call him and let's do that. So I get in. The nice young man helps me with the bike. He puts it up. I get in, and I notice 3 people in the van with me. In the front is a nice lady, and I notice that she's got a little thing of ice or something on her elbow that she's kind of holding there. And next to me is an older gentleman, and I notice that he's got just a little trace of blood on his ankle. He's got his sock off, and he's kind of wiping it down, nothing too serious. And in the back is a young girl, probably 14, and she's got her shoe off, and she's also nursing an ankle. And as I get in, we start to talk. And kind of just make small talk. I tell them that I'm on the board of trustees, and that's how I'm associated with this. The gentleman next to me confides to me that he's been riding with MS for several years. He's on this team, and that he needed to quit after a slight fall. And the lady in front, she keeps looking at me, and she finally says it. She says, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, well, nothing's really wrong. I just, my bike tire went flat, and I really don't know how to fix it. And they all 3 started to laugh, and especially this lady up front. She was a hoot, and she looked at me, and she got quiet for a few minutes. They kind of quit talking to me for a minute because I really wasn't one of them now. But anyway, she finally came back. She turned to me, and she had this real funny look on her face and this big grin, and I said, I know I'm in trouble. And she says, well, I think this is the funniest thing I've ever heard. You remember the board of trustees? And she said, I'm not sure I caught your name, but she says, I think this is a story we ought to tell out on all the social media. We ought to get this on Facebook and Twitter and all of this about how an uninjured member of the board of trustees just got in this sag wagon. You've begged us not to take you back to the finish line. You've begged us to drop you off at your car, which is kind of rude of you. She says, I just think that's hilarious, and we ought to get that right out to everybody. And the other 2 were kind of saying, yeah, we should do that. That'd be great. I didn't like the direction this conversation was going, I can tell you. So I looked at her, and I smiled, and I said, you are right. I think, as I think about this, that is the funniest story. I think you should absolutely get that out on everywhere you can. I said, I'm going to give you my name. I'm going to give you my email address. And I said, get it out there. If I can't have a sense of humor about this, then, I don't belong in this job. It's really nice to meet you. My name is Bob Harmon. So, Bob, I don't know if maybe, I haven't seen anything out there on Facebook yet, But if you've been getting some strange emails, I wanted you to know why that was. So, and I wanted to come clean, and Bob is a very forgiving man, so I knew I could tell him this story in front of all of you. So thank you, Bob. On a serious note, I know I speak for all of us when I say I'm so proud of this organization. We operate with efficiency and adapt quickly to changes. We innovate to find new and better ways to serve people affected by MS. Most importantly, the chapter keeps those who live with MS at the center of everything we do. And we've been doing it for 60 years. How about a big hand for all of you out there who make our Utah-Southern Idaho Chapter possible? Thank you. And so with that same energy, I'd like you all to welcome up to the stage Annette Royal Mitchell, our Utah-Southern Idaho Chapter President. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Todd. I'm not sure if that, I can forgive you for, I guess, getting in the sag wagon. That's the beauty of Bike MS. I don't know about Bob, so you're on your own with him. But I have to say, it's such an honor to work with the Board of Trustees that you just voted in, so thank you. They together put more than 1,000 hours in every year, really trying to make a difference in our community for people with MS. And I'm counting that because you're all here, you're seeing the impact they're making. They're a remarkable group, and I'm really excited to be working with this group as we go to the year ahead. We're going to do some more great things. So 60 years, a lot has happened in those 60 years. A lot has changed, but some things have stayed the same. Our vision to create a world free of MS. You know, our chapter was founded in 1954, thus 60 years ago, and that was just 8 years after the National MS Society was founded by Sylvia Lowry. Sylvia Lowry, when she founded the MS Society, she had one simple request, and that was to connect with others who were dealing with multiple sclerosis. So I hope you've all had a chance to look in the back of the room, some really remarkable research that's going on here locally, and you look at the history of the chapter and the history of MS, it's really quite remarkable, and to see some incredible milestones that we have achieved together. But not only has our chapter changed in the way we deliver programs and services, certainly in the research that we've had over 60 years, but we've also changed in our size and geography as well, and we merged with Southern Idaho in 2010. So today, we serve more people than ever before. We are a society united in our collective power to do something about MS now and to end this disease forever. We are a society that acts with urgency to find solutions to change the world for people with MS. Some powerful statements. So tonight I'm going to share with you a sample of our collective successes. Certainly successes that just could not have happened without so many of you in this room. What a treat to be able to mix and mingle beforehand and really the faces that are so familiar and that have made a change for us. So when you registered, you should have all gotten a program, and if you didn't, I know there's more back there, so you can get some. But I think if you look at that program, you're going to see that we had a pretty remarkable year. We had a year with great financial success. We had a year that we were able to deliver some spectacular programs and services to people, and we changed lives, and it was really pretty remarkable. But I'm going to spare you the graphs and the charts and all of those good things because I want to demonstrate the impact we're making together and share with you some of those stories. Because together we achieve results with lasting impact, and that's why we're celebrating tonight after all. So first, did you know that the National MS Society offers more programs and services than any other MS organization in the world? We truly are world leaders in this, and we provide services throughout the globe. That's because our goal is that every person with MS can live their best life with more connections to information, resources, and others to share those experiences. This year in our chapter, we had over 700 people participate in programs literally from Haley to Idaho Falls, from Price to Cedar City, from Tooele and everywhere in between, making connections and changing lives. One of the great programs that I love, and I know several of you in this room have participated in, is a program called Every Day Matters. We had a program that wrapped up in Tooele, And the participants there used that moment, that time, to connect with some people that they had not met. They didn't know each other when they came together. And when that program wrapped up, they continued to meet monthly, they continued to provide support to each other, and they continued to meet to provide support around those principles of positive psychology that they learned in Everyday Matters. And this group, although special, is truly not unique. The surveys that resulted from the Everyday Matters program show that 83% of participants have incorporated the principles of positive psychology into their daily lives, and 80% have increased confidence when dealing with challenges. So that's pretty remarkable positive change to celebrate, I think. I think something we all could do. Thanks. And certainly making an impact on people's lives to live their best life. You know, and connecting people to information and to each other is critical. So many of you hear us call out, share your story. And I wanted to just take a minute to explain to you why sharing your story is so powerful. You know, this year alone, with the media and social media that we got, we had millions, literally millions of impressions throughout our chapter territory and beyond. And there's countless opportunities to increase awareness and connect new people to the National MS Society and to the services that we have to offer. One of those was with our TV station in Boise, KBOI 2 News, that has been very supportive in providing coverage of MS Society activities up in that market. And they highlighted one of our new Walk MS participants, Laurel Lewis, who happens to be in the room and who happens to be a new employee of the Society as well, a remarkable young lady. And she shared her story about being diagnosed, about how it's impacted her life, how it's impacted her family, and how she was fighting back. And, you know, Laurel's story resonated with the viewer out there, someone Laurel didn't know. She sought her out, and this woman sought Laurel out, and ultimately was able to connect with her, provide her some information, resources, support, and ultimately connect her to the National MS Society. So if you just think for a minute about how amazing it would be for us to be able to take those millions of impressions we have and make a connection every time, to change people's lives, to give them resources, and to give them support. And speaking of connecting, I don't know if you are familiar with our msconnections.org. It's a fairly new social media site. We have over 600,000 people that visit msconnection.org, over 25,000 active members. And it's a space to connect with people wherever they live who share similar and common experiences. So if you haven't done that, there's really remarkable information and connections that can be made there. And for those of you that love our website or don't, no fear there. We have updated our website, and I am confident for those of you seeking resources and information, that was a big initiative this year for us. And so I think you're going to find it's much easier to navigate, and you're going to find that it's mobile friendly too. So we're excited about some of those operational successes. But I'm going to move on to activism now. So I'm not sure how many in this crowd are activists, but I'm counting that by the end of this evening we have signed up a few more. Visit our table back in the back. But I wanted to share with you how important it is, again, to share your story and to raise your voices to make a difference. One of the exciting outcomes of our activism work is that we had 75,000 activists over the last 6 years who worked with us on Capitol Hill, and we've received $25 million of additional research funding for MS that's come out of that congressional fund. Pretty remarkable to think that our stories and our voices can put $25 million into research. The role of advocacy at the National MS Society ensures that the voices of people affected by MS are heard and that it drives change wherever it's needed. This year I had the great pleasure of attending the Public Policy Conference, which is in Washington, D.C., with Jamie Carter from Tooele and with Ginger and LeBron Burton of Twin Falls. You know, to see them in action at the conference explaining to the representatives how MS has impacted their lives, how Congress can help them, it was truly inspiring, and it continued. It's important work to see that they are coming back and they're continuing to be advocates as well. They are tweeting out action alerts, they are staying active in their local communities, and they're being vocal about policies that can change their lives. You know, I think I will forever be inspired but when we were sitting in one of our Utah delegation offices to hear Jamie proclaim, rightly so, that she has the capacity to be remarkable, and that it was their responsibility as well to help her be remarkable. And I think being able to share that story, to just remind that people impacted with chronic illnesses are remarkable, and it's important to share our story and to tell our Congress and our elected officials how they can help us achieve our very best lives. I'm really proud of the work that our advocates do. Now, of course, none of this is possible if we don't have funds to make it happen, and we are definitely celebrating tonight because of the remarkable work of our amazing fundraisers and our events. You know, everyone who wants to do something about multiple sclerosis to fuel progress can do that through some of our event fundraising and through volunteering. We're really proud as an organization that across the country, our Bike MS, we raised more than $165 million. That's a crazy number. $165 million through Bike MS and Walk MS alone. That's pretty cool. And you know, Bike MS is the 5th largest event, not just bike event, it's the largest bike, it's the 5th largest event in the nation, and Walk is the 12th largest in the nation. So you, as you come out and support us, are part of a powerful community. You know, here in Utah, we raised over $2.3 million with special events this year, and I'm really proud of 2 amazing programs that were part of that. The I Walk with MS and I Ride with MS programs. We engaged more people with MS at these events than ever before. From Jermaine, who is all of you are one of my favorites. As I talk about you, you'll find one of my favorites, Jermaine. He participated in his first Walk MS event this year. And he proclaimed, he sent us a note after, and he said, this is what he said. He said, "The experience I had at the walk this weekend was unreal. Once I came down the finish line strip, I could totally hear everyone yelling, 'Good job,' or applauding me. I even heard someone scream my name a few times, causing me to have a high school flashback, as if I were on the basketball court again at Ogden High. Oh boy, that's when I started bawling. Here I go. He's a big guy, big basketball guy. So to hear him say that and have that moment was pretty remarkable." Or Jason, who connected with us first as a volunteer. He helped us with our MS Awareness Week, all of those great orange flags that we put all over town during MS Awareness Week. He brought his family out to support us with that. And he decided that he too wanted to get active, and he joined our I Ride with MS program and rode his first Bike MS. He shared his story at the start line, motivating 2,200 riders to pedal as far as they could. That includes Todd, who pedaled most of his way. So he inspired him to go that far. You know, events in our chapter raise over 80% of our income each year. It's really pretty remarkable what happens there. And that alone gives us great reason to celebrate. I see so many faces out there that participate. You know, we have 2 amazing title sponsors who also do amazing things with their teams. So Team Harmons of Bike MS and Team CBH Rockstars of Walk MS Boise, they also took the Top Fundraising Team Award this year, meaning that not only their corporation got behind and supported the MS Society, but they rallied others to connect and to raise funds on their own and to be our top fundraising team. So a big, big thank you to them as well. And you know, as the year goes on, we have fall walks in outlying areas, and our Northern Utah Walk raised 40% more this year than they raised last year, which is so exciting, and they are on this trajectory. They're changing the world for MS. And our 150 Club, for those of you who are familiar with our bike, it's our top 150 fundraisers in Bike MS, raised over $568,000, and that was a $77,000 increase over last year. Talk about connections and commitment, yeah. And I certainly want to shout out to 2 amazing teams past their $500,000 mark. I mean, how remarkable that our Bike MS teams can raise $500,000 and more. But a big shout out to Team Badass Coffee and Team FLH, who both took that title this year. Yeah. Truly, the support you all provide just blows me away year over year. Whether you walk or bike or participate in a dinner of champions or Women on the Move, fund a grant, donate your time, donate in other ways. It's quite remarkable to have this community, which I am so proud to be a part of. I've shared a few highlights, but I'm saving the very best for last. We are over the moon on what's happening with research. Now, you're going to get to hear in a few minutes from Dr. Fujinami the trajectory that research has had over the years. But I wanted to share a few things that I'm really proud about. I'm proud that the National MS Society is recognized as the catalyst for all major advances in MS. You know, nationally this year, the Society contributed over $50 million to 380, am I right? Yes, 380, I should know this, new and ongoing projects. That's remarkable. We have had a trajectory of investing more. There's that urgency that we need to do more, and we need to do it now. Locally, our chapter has stepped up to the challenge as well, and we have contributed this year over $600,000 to support that effort as well. And just this week, okay, we can do that. I'm in for that. You know, just this week, the 12th disease-modifying therapy was approved, Lemtrada, and just in August, the 11th disease-modifying therapy was approved. And, you know, I look back at my 7 years in this role at the Society. When I started, we had 6. And to think that in 7 years, we've doubled that number, and we're making great progress, not only in disease-modifying therapies, but in other areas of MS with wellness and nutrition and progressive MS. You know, one of the things I'm really excited about is that we have made that commitment to progressive MS. This fall, the first round of grants specifically targeting progressive MS were awarded to 22 different projects totaling over $2.2 million around the world. That is really remarkable. We've waited much too long for that. Not too long after the Society announced those grants, our chapter received a letter from a supporter expressing her enthusiasm, and I'm going to share part of that with you. I'm not a person living with MS, but I lost my son to primary progressive MS in 2001. I am now 81 years old, and they put it in the script, and I said I can't do this one, but I'm going to because it's really good. She's now 81 years old, and I can do little to help out except for small donations from my Social Security, but I know you appreciate every penny, and we do. When Russ was diagnosed in 1990, we were assured that a cure was only about 5 years away. We now know it is much more complicated. As research on the primary progressive form is in the early stages, I am very happy to know that it has begun. 4 exclamation points. I just wanted to write to let you know that I have sent my $20 to the Utah-Southern Idaho Chapter, and I would like my $20 to go to research for primary progressive MS. Remarkable lady. You know, I can only hope that you're as excited. I know I don't look excited now, but I am excited about what we are doing in research, what we are doing for progressive MS, and what we are doing together. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So on that cheerful note, okay, I get to bring up some better speakers for you to talk about the really exciting stuff. So I'm going to take this time to introduce a longtime supporter of the Society who has been a leader in the field of MS research. He's been a recipient of the Harry Weaver Award as the most promising young scientist in MS research in 1981, and he is still fighting MS today at the University of Utah. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Robert Fujinami.
Boy, it's hard to see everybody in the audience from up here. But first of all, what I wanted to do was thank all of you in the audience for not only participating, but supporting the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. What I want to do this evening is kind of go through a little bit about what has been done with multiple sclerosis, particularly about the treatments that have come on board since I started working in the field. And then also at the very end, tell you a little bit about what's going on up at the University of Utah as to how we're thinking about MS, and maybe we have some interesting data that we're trying to vaccinate against multiple sclerosis. So this way we would prevent the disease from ever starting. So what I first want to do, wrong way, is kind of bring everybody up to speed on multiple sclerosis. I know that many of you have searched the web and kind of investigated, how the disease process is ongoing. But what I want to then do is expand upon this. And so, as you can see here, this is kind of the history from the very beginning for multiple sclerosis. That is that, I don't know if so it was back in the 13th century that the first descriptions of the disease appeared in the literature. And there's an individual named Charcot who was a French neurologist and also a pathologist. And what he was doing was looking at kind of the brains of individuals with multiple sclerosis, and then also, after describing the disease, thinking about how one can treat the disease. And one of the board members, who's a long-standing neurologist, used to be chairman of the neurology department up at the U, is on the board and sitting here, and he seems to have a remarkable kind of similarity with Dr. Charcot. So there's, in the epidemiology of multiple sclerosis, and many of the treatments now are based upon some of these observations, that is that there's a genetic component to multiple sclerosis. And for the last decade or so, various investigators around the world have been looking at various genes that contribute to the initiation and propagation of multiple sclerosis. I just returned from a meeting in Germany, which was the International Neuroimmunology Society meeting, and what they're trying to do is, you heard about kind of the targeted approach people are using for progressive multiple sclerosis. And so that many of the labs around the world are looking at what are the genes that might be associated with progressive multiple sclerosis, or why do people transit from relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis and then go on to secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. So that's one of the aspects of genetics. And then also with gender. As we all know, multiple sclerosis tends to afflict more women than men. And so this ratio seems to be going up during the last 50 years or so. And so various investigators around the world are looking at why is it, or what are the contributions that gender has in some of the hormonal therapies or trials that are ongoing in multiple sclerosis approach this aspect of the disease. So also age is a factor. We know that between most individuals are diagnosed between ages 20 to 50, 20 to 40, but also there's a pediatric population of individuals or kids that develop disease. So again, are these a separate population that one can look at, particularly from the genetic side? Are there treatments different in those individuals? So again, these are some of the exciting new therapies that are ongoing, or treatments that are ongoing, looking at age distribution and how different disease, or at least immune-modifying therapies affect young children versus young adults. And then lastly, what I've been looking at are some of the immune contributions to multiple sclerosis, as well as what are the environmental triggers that trigger either the initial attack of multiple sclerosis or trigger relapses of multiple sclerosis. And so that's been my area of expertise, is looking at how the immune system interacts with the environment to initiate the disease process. So, as most of you are aware, within the central nervous system, there's a cell called the oligodendrocyte. And the oligodendrocyte is a cell that is important for myelination. So you saw at the very start of the program, there is a video about an individual or some labs that are looking at how do we fix the myelin that's demyelinated, or what are the therapies that can be used. And so recently, within the last year, we up at the university hired Tom Lane, and I don't know how many of you know about Tom's work, but it was in the press recently that what he can do is in a model for multiple sclerosis, and this is a viral model for multiple sclerosis, he can take stem cells, put them into these animals, and they can remyelinate the area of the spinal cord that's demyelinated. And so this is a very promising therapy where the mice are paralyzed from the disease, and then within a few months, these mice are not walking great, but they're walking around. And so that this is part of the studies that are ongoing around the world to look at how we can fix the demyelinated lesion within multiple sclerosis. So this is an axon, and this is an electron micrograph. And what this is that round kind of circle in the middle is the axon coming out from the screen. And then there's layers of myelin wrapped around and around and around. And that axon is important. Again, you heard the video about the laboratory looking at kind of individuals on how they walk or how they have balance issues. And so these axons are involved in transmitting information from the outside of the central nervous system, from the muscles, from your feet, from your legs, up to the central nervous system. That's processed in the brain, in the central nervous system, and then the impulses are transmitted back to the periphery. And so that here then, in multiple sclerosis, not only is there a demyelinating disease, but we want to then prevent what happens with the axons, which are the connections from the brain to the periphery. And again, there's ongoing research looking at how those drugs work and how we can maintain those connections within the central nervous system. So in the next two slides, I'm going to make you all pathologists on looking at multiple sclerosis lesions. And so, these are the cells, the macrophages, and what we call CD4 and CD8 cells. These are white blood cells that are fooled into attacking the central nervous system. And many of the therapies that are out there now are preventing these cells from getting into the central nervous system, that these are called lymphocytes. And so the immune-modifying therapies such as Tysabri are blocking those cells from the outside of the central nervous system to get into the central nervous system and blocking those cells from attacking the central nervous system. So those are how those kinds of therapies are working, and many of the current therapies act at that level, that they're trying to block those cells from getting into the central nervous system. And so, again, I'll show you toward the end on some of the things we're thinking about on trying to kind of use approaches that are outside of the box and how we can then stop these cells so that we don't have to block them, that actually we can just stop them dead in their tracks and eliminate those cells. So this is a multiple sclerosis lesion, and all these white, or all the little purple dots in the pale blue area are these immune cells going in to attack myelin. And that's what the therapies, as I mentioned, block these cells from getting into the central nervous system. And in talking to my neurology colleagues, in that much of the therapies now that are out there are actually pretty good. And so that they're reasonably well at blocking attacks. They're not so well with progressive multiple sclerosis, but they're pretty well on blocking the attacks or blunting the effects of the disease. So this is the disease course, and again, you're seeing this progression oftentimes of individuals going to a progressive or secondary progressive form of multiple sclerosis. And so that in the field, what we feel is that these early events that are occurring, the attacks, those are being reasonably treated by the current therapies. And at this meeting in Germany, there are again at least 20 more new therapies that are out there coming on board and going through phase 1 to phase 3 clinical trials to get better therapies that have less toxicity. My hope is that with more and more therapies as they come on board or come online, that the price or the market price would come down for these drugs. I haven't seen that yet, but that is my hope, that those kinds of drugs will be what in the marketplace, instead of paying $10,000 a month or $12,000 a month, that they'll come down to a reasonable price. So in going through some of the literature from the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, we've come a long way in looking at kind of how multiple sclerosis is treated. And so I mentioned Charcot, and some of the first attempts that Charcot used were pretty toxic, in that one of the agents that he was using back in the late 1800s was strychnine. Also, he was using kind of stimulation or electrotherapy, that we now know that these kinds of therapies aren't, they just don't work. But over the years, I mean, again, here the National Multiple Sclerosis Society was launched, but then we have various therapies. Acthar was one of them that came on board in the late 60s, and it's still on the market. And that company is still trying to figure out they know it works, but they're trying to figure out how it works on MS relapses. When I first started in MS research, the first MRIs were coming out. What they were doing is looking at various new kinds of drugs, interferons, kind of disease-modifying therapies for treatment of multiple sclerosis. And so in the beginning, they had kind of interferons that could work. They used Copaxone, which is a copolymer that worked. But it's interesting to me that some of these first were described and looking at in the 1980, but it wasn't until about 1993, so 13 years later, before the drugs were actually approved for therapy. And so it seems to be about a 10 to 12-year gap between the original clinical trials before the drugs come to market. And so hopefully with the newer technologies that the drug companies are using, one can bring the drugs to market a lot sooner to help patients with multiple sclerosis. I'm going to kind of skip through some of these in that, some of the more recent ones is Tysabri, and again, those have those kind of disease-modifying therapies. They do have the downside in that with Tysabri, you're all aware that a virus in the central nervous system can be activated, causing a demyelinating disease as well as a neuroinflammatory disease that is due to Tysabri. And so depending on how long one is on that therapy increases the risk for certain kinds of infections within the central nervous system. So these are some of the drugs that are ongoing and used for treatment of multiple sclerosis. And again, talking to the neurologists, they say that these drugs are actually working pretty well. And so what some of the other neurologists are thinking about is, how good is bone marrow transplantation and using that as a potential therapy for multiple sclerosis. In that, one can do a bone marrow transplant. It costs about $100,000, $120,000. And the question is, will that fix multiple sclerosis? And then you don't have to go through subsequent treatments or subsequent, paying for drugs down the line. And so these are kind of issues that are ongoing as to, what do we actually do with these current treatments, and then applying newer therapies to the treatment of multiple sclerosis. So what we're trying to do in my lab right now is kind of think out of the box as to how we can stop attacks of multiple sclerosis, that permanently stop attacks of multiple sclerosis. And so what we're doing is we're genetically engineering different kinds of viruses to do different kinds of tasks. And so what I want to do is tell you about 2 viruses that we've genetically engineered. And so for ongoing multiple sclerosis, relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis, we have a particular virus, and I have a picture of the crystallographic structure of this virus. And we've called this virus H101 that targets the inflammatory cells that would go into the central nervous system and cause multiple sclerosis. And so all the treatments for multiple sclerosis have been tested in various animal models, and we use a model called experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. And so what we do is we induce an MS-like disease in these animals, and then what we want to do then is stop the attack. So we infect the animal with our genetically engineered virus and look for exacerbations. So this is a graph showing the first attack that the animal has, and then in the latent period in through here before the next attack, we infect the animals with the genetically modified virus. And what you can see here is that we stop the attacks of, in this case, in EAE, which is a model for relapsing, remitting multiple sclerosis. And so these animals then do not develop any more attacks, and we find in the central nervous system of these animals that the lesions are clearing up, and there's much less what we call axonal degeneration and neuronal degeneration within these animals. So what we'd like to do is use this as a potential platform to try and stop ongoing disease. Lastly, what I want to do then is, can we use viruses to vaccinate against multiple sclerosis? Because in the best case scenario, it would be to just prevent the disease from starting in the first place. And so that's the goal of my lab right now, is to stop people from developing disease in the first place. And so we know that in multiple sclerosis, there are certain proteins within the myelin that the immune system is fooled into trying to attack or trying to get rid of, and that's part of the immunologic basis for multiple sclerosis. So what we've done was we've genetically modified viruses that have or look like parts of myelin. And this is to what immunologists call tolerize against myelin proteins, so that we can dampen down the immune responses against myelin. And so we have 2 different kinds of experiments that we use, where we vaccinate the animals and then we induce the MS-like disease in our animals. And what we can do is we find that in the vaccinated animals, none of these animals develop the MS-like disease, where in a control virus infection, about 3/4 of the animals develop disease. So similarly, we can do a different kind of challenge or induce an MS-like disease in our animals, but we vaccinate first. And again, in this experiment, 0 out of 14 and 2 out of 9 come down with the multiple sclerosis-like disease. And so we're very encouraged with these kinds of experiments that then we're looking at the basis or the immunologic basis as to the protection on these animals from getting the MS-like disease. And so then if we can understand that, then we can apply it to individuals who are genetically susceptible, that have certain what we call HLA types that are more susceptible to multiple sclerosis, and maybe we can vaccinate those individuals before any of them develop multiple sclerosis. So that is our kind of ongoing goal right now in the laboratory. So this is just my ending slide. We know something is going on. We need to work harder to figure out what's going on. And maybe the action is just right in front of us and we just can't see it. And so we just need to take a bigger picture of the process. So thank you very much. I was supposed to introduce Becky.
Thank you, Dr. Fujinami. I couldn't recite or repeat any of those graphs or numbers, but I think I heard possible vaccine for MS in the future, and that's awesome. And thank goodness I didn't knock him off the stage and have him bump his head, because I think we need him around. So tonight, I get the lucky job of announcing our Impact Awards, which is celebrating some of the great individuals, volunteers, and partners that we have out in the community that have truly made a difference in the past year. So first, I'd like to have our chapter president, Annette Royal Mitchell, and our board chair, Todd Oldroyd, come join me right over here. And as I announce our honorees, if you could just come forward and accept your award from Annette and Todd, and we'll probably take a photo, and we'll do it like that. So first, corporate partners. Corporate partners are a pretty key part of the movement because they underwrite our events so that every dollar you donate and every dollar you raise goes right to the mission. And finding new corporate partners isn't always the easiest task. So you can imagine how excited we were when last year we were brainstorming who else can we call up. And we reached out to Mauro Fiore, and he's been a 150 Club member for a long time, and he works with Morgan Stanley. And he said, sure, come on in, I'll get some key players in the room. And within a week of our discussion, they said, you know what, this is a great idea. I think we're gonna host a walk team. I think we'll have a bike team. And I think we'd like to be a bronze sponsor of Bike MS. I was like, well, awesome, we'll take it. And they didn't just step up and form a team, but between their bike and their walk teams, they raised over $23,000, and they were our rookie team of the year at Bike MS this year. And Caleb, I don't know if you're here, I haven't seen you yet, but if you could please come up and accept the award. Please, let's give a warm round of applause to Morgan Stanley. They're taking pictures if you can. I know you can't see the photographer, but he's way back there. So. Thank you. Our next recipients you heard a little bit about earlier tonight when Annette talked about Public Policy Conference. But Ginger and LeBron Burton of Twin Falls attended Public Policy Conference in Washington, D.C. this year for the first time, and they learned the value and the impact of sharing their story and being an MS activist. When they returned from D.C., they shared their experience with our Board of Trustees, they tweeted about it and promoted it at Walk MS. In addition, they've been longtime supporters of Walk MS. They've helped us through some tough times of transition, and they've raised over $3,000 this year. And rumor has it, they're going to be helping spearhead a little event called the Bed Races next year, and I'm certain we continue to count on them to keep the movement growing. Please put your hands together and welcome Ginger and LeBron Burton. And they're such great volunteers, they drove all the way down from Twin Falls to be with us tonight. Congratulations. Our next Impact Award winner has been a bit of a silent partner, just quietly providing support throughout the years. They've been providing in-kind donations of water, transportation services, refrigerated trailers, all the sexy stuff you think about when you think about supporting events. But Associated Foods has also supported a great Bike MS team, the AFS Red Riders originally, and then the AFS Green team. This past year, they also increased their support to a Walk MS team, the AFS Sweet Feet. And between the two of them, they raised over $18,500. This past year in 2014, we had some logistical changes at Bike MS. And hopefully none of you on the outside saw it, but on the inside, there were some growing pains. And they didn't bat an eye about having to make an extra stop to pick up some donated ice or waiting patiently at the fairgrounds to help unload 18 pallets of water when they caught our crew a little bit unaware. So thank you to Associated Foods for all you do for us and the incredible impact you've made on the community. Darren, I haven't seen Darren. There he is. It's really bright up here. I need some special lights. Darren Pinkerton, who's been a longtime supporter and the team captain. I'm sure in no time they'll be giving Team Harmons a run for their money. It's not a challenge at all. We also present every year an impact award called the Jay Germakin Award. And Jay, I don't know if you'd like to come up and join us. Okay. Jay, the great man it's named after, is over here in the front row. And it's named after Jay because of the great vision and passion and leadership he's provided our chapter for nearly 2 decades. This year's recipient is someone many of you know very well. Safia Keller has served as a trustee since 2008, and she just completed a 2-year term as our board chair. During her tenure, there was not an event or a program she didn't personally touch with her time, talent, or treasure. Whether it was co-captaining a Bike MS team, serving on the Women on the Move committee, congratulating our scholarship recipients, or traveling to Walk MS in Boise or Wood River or Twin Falls to meet and listen to our constituents throughout our chapter, she is also leading our chapter's commitment with the Now research campaign to help us reach that goal of raising $3.2 million right here in the Utah-Southern Idaho chapter. She is our #1 cheerleader and our biggest fan, ensuring that people with MS are at the center of everything we do. Please join me in congratulating Safia Keller with the Jay Germakin Impact Award. Well deserved, Safia. And last but certainly not least, our Volunteer of the Year award is known as the Norman Cohen Hope Award. And this is an award that's given out annually in every chapter across the nation. This year's recipient has been involved intricately with Bike MS since 2009. I'm sure he was involved before, but I say intricately, like making an impact in the theme of the awards. Slowly increasing his participation from volunteer to committee member, to recruiting sponsor support from the Bonneville Cycling Club, to forming a team, to increasing their sponsor support, and all the while increasing his level of volunteer support. Throughout the year, Don Williams drove countless miles to help fine-tune our route maps for Bike MS, donated his time to help mark our team village, recruited and trained a team of ride marshals to keep our cyclists safe on the roads, as well as marked all 150 miles of the route during Bike MS weekend. He has introduced countless new faces to the MS movement, and we can always count on Don to keep our staff smiling and laughing, no matter the circumstance. Please join me in thanking and congratulating our 2014 Norman Cohen Hope Award, Don Williams.
Move over. Okay, I'm able to be here because Bonneville Cycling Club got re-involved with the event about 7 or 8 years ago, where we saw a need that we could fulfill adding comfort riders to the event. Since that time, Bonneville's become a silver level sponsor, then a gold level sponsor. For those of you last year on Friday before the event that were still at your offices, trying to figure out how you were going to get out early to get a prime camping spot, we had a group of 12 that were waiting on the thunderstorms to pass so we could go out and mark the route. Part of that group included the city planner from the city of Logan, who has a family member with MS, and he rides his bike over to the fairgrounds, helps us mark for 4.5 hours, then goes out and finishes his government job in the afternoon while the rest of us are still putting out signs and marking and all that kind of stuff. So Bonneville makes it possible for me to be here. But it's all about the event. So when we started ride marshaling, we met things like, everybody knows where the Honey Lady is, right? If you do the loop above Weston, you go past the Honey Lady's house. The first year we're standing there, a guy rides up on a rental bike, which is another oddity that I've never ever seen on a bike event until we got involved with MS. They get a bike, they get tires, they don't get a bag, Todd. They don't get tubes. And they ride up, and a guy rides up to us and says, "I'm so glad to find you guys. I've been riding 2 miles looking for somebody to change my flat tire." And we did, and then continued on with the ride. We see a lot of cobweb bikes, and they don't even bother brushing the cobwebs off or oiling the chain before they come out. And that's just part of what you see. But best of all, when you do come upon an accident and somebody's laying there and they're waiting to take a ride in on the hook, you walk over and say, "You got a little road rash, but I looked at your bike and it's going to be okay." And they give you 2 thumbs up, then you slide them in the back, and off they go to see whoever they're going to see in Logan. That's part of what makes the event so enjoyable for us. Wait a minute, let me make sure I haven't missed anything.
I thought you were going to take off another shirt.
Associated Grocers. I'm the guy that rides by, and Bob Harmon. I'm the guy that rides by and says, "Hey, are y'all carrying any extra sandwiches? I'm going to be needing one before the next rest stop." Associated brought me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich last year. I remember Randy's beard. If you ever know my wife, you can ask her about how I come up with random thoughts. On Sundays, we get to go out and do it again. We ride up probably one of the greatest routes the event has ever seen, going up the canyon and back. We still have one dam to call our credit to. But this year, because of some challenges, because of some opportunities, the new Saturday event could go by 2 ice cream factories before we even get to lunch. It could happen. It could happen. So there will be some good changes coming up for loops around Franklin. We may be seeing Preston this year. We may be riding to Egypt, Idaho. There really is a place, I swear. We've been there on our bikes. Our club rides up there a lot. It could happen, so we'll see. We're looking for big things to happen this June. Thank you so much. Thanks. I'll go redress.
Unless you had another wardrobe change. You can see why Dawn keeps us smiling and laughing even when we learn that we can't pull into another rest stop week or 2 before the ride. So thank you, Dawn. How about one big round of applause for all of our Impact Award honorees? Before I introduce our keynote speaker tonight, I do have to say a very, very special thank you to Modern Expo and Events. They became a partner of ours 2 years ago, and because of them, we're here in this great venue. They donated all the time and the staff and the resources to set up this lovely event that we are in tonight. So thank you to Modern Expo and Events. And now, for the main event, I'm honored to have with us a woman who truly does give us a reason to celebrate. Diagnosed in 1999, adventure enthusiast Lori Schneider was determined not to let MS slow her down. On May 23, 2009, she became the first person in the world with MS to summit Mount Everest. And she has since become the first person with MS to conquer the 7 summits. I think you'll find Lori's message full of hope, inspiration, and self-empowerment. A call to take a risk and climb beyond our own preconceived limitations. Please join me in welcoming Lori Schneider, just back from her latest expedition. Here she comes now.
was a tough day at the office. Well, I'm honored to be here today to share my story of empowerment in a room filled with people who are, first of all, helping to empower all of those of us who live with this disease through your dedication and your generosity, and we sure thank you for that. And it's wonderful to be a part of this 60-year celebration as well. So thanks so much to the Utah and the Southern Idaho chapters of the National MS Society for inviting me here today. I have two stories that I want to share with you today, and one is about climbing the mountains of the world, but the other one's about climbing the mountains and the obstacles in our life. And I think both of those things take a lot of strength and a lot of courage and a really strong will. And I'm just this girl who was born and raised in Wisconsin. I never even saw a mountain until I was much older, let alone dreamt of climbing one or 7 of them. And growing up, I was never athletic at all. After high school, I went away to an all-women's college. I got married 1 month after graduation. I started a 20-year teaching career, teaching elementary children and handicapped children in special ed. And my life was really normal and predictable. But then 20 years later, this series of events happened in my life that I absolutely never could have predicted, and it's changed my life. I'll never forget the day. It was January 4th, 1999. I woke up in the morning and half of my body had literally gone numb overnight, as if someone had drawn a line. One side was numb, one wasn't. And the doctors feared the worst, and they tested me for stroke, MS, Lyme's disease, lupus, and then even brain cancer. And I remember being wheeled down a hallway just minutes away from having a brain biopsy done, where I'd be screwed into a halo device, and then my scalp and skull would be cut open. They would drill 3 holes in a triangular shape, remove the bone, and take samples of the lesions that they were seeing showing up on this MRI. And they said they wanted to do it while I was awake because they didn't want to take a part of the brain that I might really need. And as I was being wheeled down the hallway, I heard my name being paged. I answered the phone, and on the other side of the line was a doctor. And he said, "We're a teaching hospital. We change physician teams the first of each month." And by now, 3 months had gone by, and it was March 1st. And he said, "I don't think you have brain cancer." And I said, "What should I do?" And he said, "Go to the desk, ask for a scissors, cut off the wrist bracelet that they had on me, and go home." And you should have seen the nurse chase me down the hallway when I ran out. But so following 4 lumbar punctures, multiple tests and MRIs, they realized that they indeed had misread my very first test, and I did have multiple sclerosis. When I heard those 2 little letters, MS, like most of us when we hear it, I panicked. I ran away from everyone and everything. I quit my 20-year teaching career. I left a 22-year marriage. I sold my house. I left my community and my support group. And I ran back to Wisconsin to get the support of my family. I ran away in fear, and I wanted to do everything I could while I still had good use of my legs, because they thought maybe in a year I'd be in a wheelchair. But what I realized, it wasn't until I left that I really found myself, and mountain climbing helped give me back my life. I needed to find a goal that seemed bigger in my mind than my disability was, and it helped me to take my life back. So what began as my father's dream back in the 70s became this goal that I would strive for so much of my adult life. And that goal was to climb the highest peak on each of the 7 continents. But it really did intensify back in 1999 when I woke up numb from the MS. And it all really started, though, back when I was in high school. I was in the kitchen with my dad, and he said, someday I want to go to Africa and climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And my dad was athletic. He was a runner for a while, and I love him dearly. And I said, someday I'll go with you. Well, 20 years later, I was on a 2-year leave of absence from my teaching career. My dad and I met in Africa. We trained ahead of time, and we summited on his 61st birthday. So now I want to fast forward for just a minute to 2011. Now, the mountain's the same, Kilimanjaro, but my reason for climbing that mountain a second time was very different. This time I wanted to take other people that had MS on a journey of their own, a leap of faith, so that they could start to believe in themselves once again. So I asked my dad if he wanted to go one more time. He was 79 at the time. And we took with us a group of 10 people with MS, 4 people with Parkinson's disease, and 14 companion climbers, so that each person with a disability would have a partner who wasn't necessarily any stronger, but so everyone had a friend along the way. And we were called the Leap of Faith team, and it was a chance for us to move beyond the boundaries that we had set for ourselves. The age span was 24 years to 94. So in all, we had 7 out of the 10 with MS made it to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. All 4 with Parkinson's disease, and they were in their 50s and 60s. They all made it to the summit, and 11 of the partners made it as well. But all of us really proved to ourselves that we're stronger than we think sometimes. So let me just go back to the story now, because bringing a group to Africa really brought it back full circle to me. But how did that journey start? Well, 6 years after that first climb of Kilimanjaro with my dad, we had the idea to go to climb the highest peak in South America, which was Mount Aconcagua. So 4 days after we sent in our payment, which was about a year in advance, we trained for a year, was that morning, January 4th, 1999, when I swung my leg out of bed and realized that I was numb from head to toe. And during that 3 months of testing, I remember being in the hospital, and a doctor walked in my room, and it was 5 in the morning, and I was doing sit-ups in bed. And he said, Lori, what are you doing? And I said, sit-ups. And he said, what for? And I said, well, in a few months, I'm going to South America to climb a nearly 23,000-foot peak, and I have to stay in shape. And of course, they're thinking at that point that I'm probably dying, and he kind of rolled his eyes and he said, oh, okay, and he walked out, and I think he thought they should send me to the psych ward. But I continued to train without telling anybody about my illness for fear they wouldn't let me go. But 10 months later, my father and I went to South America. I made it to the summit of that peak on the millennium, New Year's Eve, 99, 2000. I was one of 14 people that made it that day. And I stood on top and I thought, girl, if you're strong enough to climb a mountain, you're strong enough to climb your mountain of MS, and stop being afraid and stop being ashamed. And it was time to keep that secret that I'd held inside for so long, to let it out. And that day was a real turning point in my life. So every couple of years, I would save money to do another climb. And in 2002, I was going to climb the highest peak in Europe, Mount Elbrus. 2 days before I was to leave for the climb, I got a phone call from my dad that my mom had died. She had heart disease. We didn't know it. And my life was just shattered for a while, and I canceled the climb. Went home to be with my family, and after about a month, my dad said, your mom was your biggest fan. She'd be really mad if you didn't go. So I went to climb Mount Elbrus. I got to the top, and I still remember that day. It was 30 below zero. I was crying up on top, and I said, goodbye, Mom. And the tears froze to my cheeks. But I feel like she climbs with me in spirit every time now. So from there, in 2006, I went to climb North America's highest peak, Denali, as the climbers call it. Some people call it Mount McKinley. But for me, that was the hardest physical mountain of the 7 summits, because this was my pack that I used, and I had to carry 60 pounds in the pack and then drag 60 pounds in a sled behind me. And I was the only woman on a team of 10 men. And I remember training for that by putting a 50-pound bag of dog food in my pack and walking up and down the hills at our local Wisconsin ski area. And my little dog Charlie followed me every step of the way because he loved the rustling noise. But after a successful summit, really hard climb, I came back down and I started to think, you know, gosh, my body's probably in pretty good shape. Maybe I'll run a marathon. So 3 weeks later, I ran a marathon in the heat of the summer, and I started to lose vision in one eye. Now, early on, when I was first diagnosed, I had every symptom in the book: numbness and tingling. I had bad muscle spasms. I had the optic neuritis, and I couldn't see well. I had cognitive issues, a lot of them. So when I got back down and this optic neuritis came back, I thought maybe I burst a blood vessel, but the doctor said no, this was my MS again. So I went in the hospital for a week of IV steroid treatments, and while I was in there, I said, you know, my back was really hurting when I was on Denali. And they said, well, yeah, carrying 60 pounds. And they did an MRI, realized that one of the lumbar punctures many years ago had missed and caused a slow leak of spinal fluid. And every time I walked, those discs were being smashed together, and it had formed a blister. So I had to have back surgery. It took me about a year to recover, but now my back is pretty strong. So about 3 years later, I decided to go and finish all of the last 3 within a year's time. I went to Australia to climb Mount Kosciuszko. Pretty easy mountain, except that when we got there, it was the worst blizzard Australia had had in decades, they told me, and we couldn't make it, and it's usually just an afternoon hike. So we had to turn around, go back 2 days later. But I think it's interesting how sometimes the easiest tasks and the easiest things we think to do can end up being the hardest for us, and I find sometimes that's true with the MS too. From there, I went to climb Antarctica. And this was really my training ground for Everest. And it's the coldest and windiest and driest continent on Earth. And it's about 5 million square miles of ice. When we got there, our first attempt at the summit, 45 below zero, 45-mile-an-hour winds, we got to within 200 feet of the summit. And the call was made to cancel the climb. It was too deadly and dangerous. So we turned around, went back down after 10 hours of climbing, and the next day we went up. It was only 25 below and no wind, and it was really balmy and nice. So from there, 3 months later, I headed to Nepal to climb the tallest mountain in the world, Mount Everest, at 29,039 feet. And I kept a journal while I was on the mountain, because everybody asked me, why Everest? And that climb took about 2 months to reach the top. Mount Everest journal entry, March 29th, 2009. Why Everest? For 20 years, I taught elementary and special education in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. My goal as a teacher was to help children believe in themselves and not be afraid to try. Now it's my turn to learn that lesson. In attempting a goal as lofty as Everest, I give myself permission to try. I have to believe in myself in order to live my dreams. Sure, I might not always succeed at what I attempt, but there's no failure in that. The success is in the journey. It's always in the journey. So, we walked, and we had yaks that helped along the way.
Flew in by helicopter, and now it's continuing on by yak and porter.
We had 50 yaks that helped our group. But about a week before I left to go to Everest, I got a phone call from the World MS Day headquarters in London, and they'd heard that this woman was going to attempt to climb Everest, this woman with MS. And they asked me if I would take a flag for World MS Day in hopes that I would make the summit. Well, they sent it to Nepal, but it didn't reach the area that we started in time, so they strapped it on the back of one of those yaks. And it took about 10 days for the flag to get there. And when I got it, it was so stinky. And I was so proud of it and put it and wore it in my coat the whole time when I was there. So I was very proud to carry that along with me. So after 10 days of climbing, we arrived at Everest Base Camp, where we'd spend now about 5 weeks going up and down the mountain to acclimatize. And it was really our sanctuary when we were there. But now we were switching from being hikers to climbers. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, what's this small town girl from Wisconsin doing in the world of mountaineering? Because I had no sponsors. I had no formal mountaineering training. I read about it in books. And I had no way to repay the huge, huge loan that I took out to do that climb. And I thought, am I crazy? Probably. But I think I was just a girl with a big dream, and I needed to overcome my fear of that label of MS too. And I think it's okay to have big dreams in our life. So we continued on, and really my strategy while I was on Everest was not to let fear in, because frankly, everything there is pretty darn scary. We saw and heard avalanches every single day. I saw the body of a very famous climber, Scott Fisher, frozen in the ice, and that would have been enough to send me home had I let the fear in. But I needed to convince myself that in order for me to stay strong, I couldn't let that fear in. And I find that so true with my MS. I can't let fear rule my life. I have to keep moving forward and doing the things I love and not let it stop me from living a life. On Everest, we had to cross a lot of ladders, but for me, that was the scariest part of Everest, and I think we had to cross a lot of mental ladders to be there at all. And I, again, think that that's something living with a diagnosis of anything. I think you have to really cross that mental ladder and move from one place to the other so that you can keep moving forward in your life. But some of those ladders were latched together. They'd tie 4 together at a time, and you'd step on them and they'd bounce. And my strategy while I was on it, I would step on each rung wearing these crampons on my feet, and I would spell words as I'd step on each ladder rung, words that would empower me, so I'd be, C-O-U-R-A-G-E, courage and believe and leap of faith, and it got me through some of the really scary times when I was on it. Overcoming fear. 9 grueling hours up the Lhotse face, and we're at 23,500 feet, Camp 3. The incredibly steep 40 to 60% incline in thin air causes us to take 1 step, then 7 breaths. 1 step, then 7 breaths. It's the kind of thing nightmares are made of. There are many things in life that once scared me. Being alone, having MS, being broke, or attempting things I was uncertain of. Now, at 52, I'm all those things at once. I'm here on this mountaintop in Nepal with no family to comfort me, $80,000 in the hole, hanging off the side of a wall made of ice, asking myself, am I afraid? Oddly, the answer is no. I trust that this is where I'm meant to be, and I'm feeling at peace. I'm here to learn about overcoming fear and about trusting my instincts. So now, after 7 weeks of climbing and acclimatizing, it was time for us really to move forward past those obstacles in our lives. And, you know, my obstacle is called MS, but everybody has a mountain to climb. Yours may be MS too, or it could be high blood pressure or cholesterol issues. It could be cancer. It could be problems in your relationships or with finances. I mean, we all have some kind of issue that we have to move forward on. And I felt like now it was my time to keep the what ifs put aside. You know, what if this happens? What if that happens? And just try. Try to move forward each day with it. May 21st. In climbing Everest, I'm learning to conquer my fear of failure. I've overcome my ideas of what limits me in my life, and I've learned that if I believe, I can achieve. I took a leap of faith in even attempting this mountain, and that was the first of many little steps that will carry me all the way to the summit of Mount Everest, and those in my life as well. It's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves, said Sir Edmund Hillary. So now it was time to put on oxygen. We wore it for 5 days straight as we entered an area that they called the death zone, above 25,000 feet, where it was hard to breathe and hard to move and hard for your body to want to do anything. But we got ready and started out for our summit. And I still remember thinking how lucky we were that we had Sherpas along the way on our summit night to help us. They were the ones that helped us carry the load when we couldn't do it all ourselves, much like a lot of you here help people with MS carry the load, being their life Sherpas. So it was time to step forward and just see where it would take us. Summit Day, May 23rd. As we journey out into the blackness of night, our headlamps light up the sky like fireflies. We trudge for hours in the dark terrain. All through the night, with very few stops, we go step, breathe, 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 step, breathe, breathe, breathe. This snail's pace is faster than the normal crawl because we're aided by lungs full of oxygen. And I remember at this point thinking, you know, it's really hard, but I'm doing all right. But then our weather window changed pretty quickly. Summit Day turns dangerous. Clear skies soon turn to clouds, preceded by snow flurries, followed by whiteout conditions and high winds. We were climbing into even more treacherous terrain with every step, and soon we reached the Hillary Step. And that is a really scary place. The weather was deteriorating quickly. We climbed over large boulders and we crossed narrow rock ledges, dropping off thousands of feet on each side. Yes, we were roped for safety, clipped to a line that would catch us should we fall, but I think I would have died of a heart attack anyway. My brain screamed, "Don't let fear in." And I want to take you to our summit night, our actual team as we were starting to climb that night. see it? The video stops there because the guide that was filming broke his lungs at that point, broke his ribs at that point, broke 2 ribs from coughing so hard. And the rest of us went up, the rest of us that were still climbing. But 5 oxygen tanks later, 10 hours up, 6 hours back down, I became the first person with MS to stand on top of that mountain. And for me, it was, thank you. Thank you. But for me, it was such an honor to carry the hopes and dreams of all of us living with MS with me every step of the way, because I know I'm one of the really lucky ones with this disease because I have my mobility. And it was through strength and courage of the people that I'd met that helped me get to the top. And people ask me, what was it like to be on top of the world? And for those 10 surreal minutes that we were up there, I couldn't see a thing. Those clouds that were down low in the valley early moved up as the day warmed up, and it was a whiteout. And after 16 years of dreaming about it, I couldn't see a darn thing. But what I could do was to look inside, and what I saw was this person that 10 years before was afraid her life was over. And I saw this person who wasn't afraid to live life anymore. And I saw this person who was brave enough to follow her dreams and her heart. And that's what I hope all of you continue to do. And as I climbed this mountain, with every hard step that I took, I thought of all the people that I had met who have difficulty even getting across a room. Those are the people that have the real courage. Those are the people that have the real strength. And those were the inspiration that I had every step climbing up to the top, and they were the ones that made me so proud to stand up there. So very proud. And I want to thank all of the people that are out there helping all of us every day, because this is a hard disease for many people, for many, many people, and we need advocates to speak for us, to help fundraise for us, to do the research for us, and people like the National MS Society who funds that research so that we have hope that our lives can be better, because they can be. And celebrating how far we've come in 60 years, yeah, we've come a long way. And it's because of people like you that are out there to help those of us who live with this disease every day, because we have hope. We have a lot of hope. And I'm going to finish by reading my final journal entry, May 20th, 2009, Reinventing My Life. Daughter, wife, teacher, ex-wife, ex-teacher, mountain climber. As I reflect over the past 2 months, many times I feel small and insignificant in my world. Who would have thought as a little girl growing up playing with dolls that my life would have progressed to where I am now? As I have moved through the ages and stages in my life, I felt the pain and pleasure of each of my 52 years. I'm soft, tender, feminine, yet wonderfully tough. I have reinvented my life these past 10 years. I've gone from teaching young children to be brave and trusting themselves to teaching myself that very lesson. Through these experiences in my life, I've begun to teach others as well. My lessons: live your dreams, one step at a time. Trust. Take a leap of faith. Be brave. Dream big, really big, and believe in the unbelievable. Climb beyond your limits, but don't forget to breathe. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank all of you. Thanks. I appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks. You don't have your boots on.
Lori, thank you so much for joining us tonight, for your message of inspiration for all of us to face the challenges we all have. We want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. We ran a little bit over, but thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing all of you in the year ahead and with all of our activities, and drive carefully going home tonight.